This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms and Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. And today, as it's been easily one of our most requested titles, Jonathan is going to be breaking down the weaponry of Insurgency Sandstorm.
Gaming is not just about firearms, of course. Some sort of launcher is a staple of most shooters. This game features the RPG-7. Quite a good depiction, I thought.
If there are any other games, guns or mechanics that you guys want to see Jonathan react to, do let us know in the comments below and make sure to subscribe for videos exactly like this. And if you want to help out the Royal Armouries Museum and continue to support Jonathan's work, then please check out the links in the description of this video. Right, over to Jonathan.
Okay, pause. I did not expect a first-person shooter set in the present day to feature a Second World War silent pistol, which is the Welrod, as I'm sure people already know. Now, they did get used after the Second World War. I don't know how late, certainly not as late as the 2010s. So it's kind of anachronistic to see one in use in this pseudo-realistic military setting. And it really doesn't make much sense to be running and gunning with this thing like it's a rifle. I've never seen one with any kind of rail welded or otherwise attached to it. They predate that kind of accessorization, and you would want to keep them slim and compact anyway. In terms of how it's depicted as a model, it's a weird hybrid of the Mark II 32 ACP version and the Mark I 9mm. They're effectively two different series and they're different calibers. We have the only Mark I 32, by the way, at the Royal Armouries, which is an actual mini bolt action. This thing has like a disc bolt that you grasp, rotate, pull back, shove forward, rotate again. And that's depicted pretty accurately here. Here is a 9mm Mark I Welrod. So just to prove the point that this is actually pretty well depicted, rotate, pull out, empty cartridge case would be thrown out. You can see the two lugs there that lock the gun shut, push forward, turn to lock. That's then cocked the striker inside. And when we press the grip safety, which is what this is, you can then pull the trigger to fire the gun. One of the best subjectively suppressed firearms ever created, and still as quiet as a modern suppressed pistol. But that's the problem, because a modern self-loading pistol with a screw-on or other attachable suppressor or detachable suppressor, pretty much as quiet as this, and you get more than 5 shots and you don't have to work a bolt. So this thing was obsolete by the 1960s, if not before. Pause there then. Got an Uzi. Like all submachine guns, it's a bit out of fashion these days. It's relatively heavy for what it is. Looked pretty good to me. I don't really understand the competition style cocking handle that's fitted to it. I've not seen that done before on an Uzi. Not really sure why you'd bother, but it's not implausible. And a sort of bodged on vertical foregrip. Otherwise it's the standard Uzi from the 50s, which we happen to have an example of here. And it looks pretty good. 3 fire control settings, automatic, repetition, and safe. And it's a pistol cartridge. So I imagine the damage model in the game reflects the fact that it is a weaker cartridge. The Mark IV, or the L2A3. Mark IV is Sterling's in-house designation for the same gun. L2A3 was the definitive British Army version of this 9mm submachine gun that we've just seen in that clip. Now, I've grabbed this one primarily because I am slightly aghast at the welded on Picatinny rail that the game has on the top of the gun. I'm not even sure that would work, because the receiver is, being a tube, first of all, is curved, obviously. So some company would have to design you a Picatinny rail attachment. And it's also very narrow because there's the cocking handle slot. So a Picatinny rail, I think, would be slightly too wide to even fit. For me, it's the principle of, if you're going to have a cool sort of legacy retro gun in the game, why would you ruin it by adding modern features like that? I didn't spot how it's functioning, but it should be operating from the open bolt in that position there. Pull the trigger, gun goes bang, bolt blows back, and continues to move if you hold the trigger down. I'm still pleased to see it in a video game, don't get me wrong, but it'd be nice if it was in its original trim. We've got another MP5. This one that I've grabbed it's an SD, the suppressed version, which is what we saw being used just then. I quite like the way that one was depicted. I'm a connoisseur of video game MP5s, and that one pretty much nailed the MP5 in general and the SD specifically. The sound effects are not far off what you actually hear in real life when you shoot this thing or you hear this thing shot. People often say it's so quiet, all you hear is the bolt clicking back and forth, which is mostly true. Slight pop from the muzzle, the loud clang of the bolt moving, you're going to know something's going on, but you might not know that it's a firearm. And this was, for decades, was the default definitive suppressed submachine gun. Wasn't really worth using anything else, provided you could afford this.
Securing B!
Okay, pause. I often say that you can't have certainly a first-person shooter without a Kalashnikov variant in there somewhere. In fact, what I'd expect and like to see would be lots of different variants. Looks like a decent representation of the AKM. We've got the correct Russian-style sight mount riveted to the side of the receiver rather than some made-up rail system on the top cover, which wouldn't really work with a normal AK. So that's a good compromise of accessorization without changing the classic look of the gun. There has been a choice to include, or the version of the AKM that's in the game is the Romanian MD63, which is an AKM in all but name, except for markings, but also its distinctive forward curved wooden grip, which is ergonomically quite tricky because it does affect how the magazine goes on. As a relatively early attempt at a vertical foregrip, it does help to control automatic fire. A lot of AKs historically have been used like a submachine gun. Pulling down on that like a Thompson foregrip was a valid way to use it. The SA80 has been a feature of desert warfare for the last couple of decades. It's good to see different nations' weapons represented in that way. Being British and a firearms specialist, I have a weird sort of love-hate relationship with the SA80. I've just written a book that includes several chapters on the difficult story of how it came to be. The one I've got in my hands here is almost identical. In fact, I think it is identical, except for the vertical grip, to the weapon as it's depicted in Insurgency. The optical sight is the SUSAT 4-power optic. Again, that's assuming this is set in the sort of mid to late 2000s, that's correct. They're all now painted a desert sand color as well, incidentally, appropriately for this game, although the game depicts the old style black painted version, which is what I have here. Nitpicks, well, you don't slap the bolt release with your palm of your hand like you would an AR-15, and like as is depicted in Insurgency Sandstorm, you simply press it. I think someone has seen that catch and assumed that it's a press, like a lever, as it is on the AR, which it isn't. The other big one, which I think I'm right in saying is the case, is safety. There's no safety depicted on the weapon. This is the safety. It's not an awful setup. You do need the other hand to apply the safety, but if you're applying the safety, you're generally not in the face of the enemy. It works the way that matters, which is when you're ready for action, you press it in and then bring your finger to the trigger.
Someone's down! I'm reloading!
Okay, that's a pause. G36, standard German army rifle. And the version in the game has the AG36 grenade launcher fitted to it. Press the button in the trigger guard, and the tube pops out to the side for loading. That means, in theory, you can load longer cartridges. Pretty well depicted, I think. The sights, the grenade sights, are on there. Flip up the rear with your thumb, flip up the front, and it gives you the extreme elevation that you need to lob these low-velocity grenade rounds. Another take on the very common AR-15 platform. We've actually got two versions of the M16 in this game, and this one has got, this A4 has the master key underbarrel shotgun fitted to it, which I've seen in a few games over the years. It's a lot of fun gameplay wise because you're combining the sort of short range devastation you get from a video game shotgun with low magazine capacity and pump reload with the capability of a rifle. It's not, the name is a clue as to what it was actually for. It wasn't for shooting people with. Master key, as in one key that will let you in all the doors. It's for knocking doors down, or rather blowing the hinges away so that you can kick the door down. Now, it's not to say that it couldn't be used or wouldn't be used for shooting people with. I imagine if you use it to blow a door down, you might not necessarily switch to the rifle. And it was never a standard issue accessory. The PKM, it looks like a well-modeled example of the PKM. I saw tracer fire. We often now, almost always see a version of tracer fire to really indicate where fire's coming from, where your fire is going in a video game sense. That looked a bit more realistic in terms of it's a green color. There is green-red tracer. Tracer is usually a bright primary color, not generic bullet orange. So the developers are trying to go for a bit more realism. Otherwise, bullets should be invisible. You shouldn't see them zipping through the air unless it's disturbing the atmosphere on a very long-range shot. I just want to comment quickly on in a positive sense, on the ammunition management system that I see in this game. Other tactical shooters that I've played, I always appreciate if they model ammunition fired from a magazine, or in some cases, boxes of belted ammunition, whatever the feed device is. It makes you think and it changes gameplay. You run around a corner, because otherwise you can constantly top up reload, which is not realistic and I think less fun. I think if you have to remember what's in your magazines, certainly for a tactical themed game, it makes it more enjoyable. All right, pause. An interesting substitute for the Barrett, I think, in this case, the Chinese M99 anti-materiel rifle. Not much is known about the M99 in terms of its capabilities, so I don't know if it's less accurate than the Barrett. It does differ in terms of being gas operated. It has a conventional-ish gas system on it, which might well contribute to less accuracy. Hard to say, speculation really. So it's kind of it's interesting to see it in the game. It's probably the only game it's ever been depicted in, and thanks to the internet, we're able to get enough images to depict it in a way that looks realistic. But I don't know how realistically it actually is depicted. Gaming is not just about firearms, of course. Some sort of launcher is a staple of most shooters. This game features the RPG-7, as many others have. Quite a good depiction, I thought. I removed the warhead or munition. It's not a grenade, at least not by Western standards. You can see it does look very, very similar. In terms of loading, something a lot of games get wrong that this game doesn't, is this doesn't screw in. This just sits in place. It's held by friction. By a washer, and there's a screw here that you locate into the groove, and it's just a friction fit. Iron sights on this for emergencies, designed to use the optical sight, and a very effective unguided anti-tank, anti-vehicle, anti-structure weapon. I hope you've enjoyed watching this breakdown of some of the weapons of Insurgency Sandstorm. If you'd like to donate to the Royal Armouries Museum or to become a member, we have got links in the description. No pressure at all. I just hope you enjoyed the video. Hope to see you next time.